Canvas, so good to be with you. My name is Philip Pattinson. I lead Foster the City. Today in San Francisco, about half of the kids that enter into foster care will be sent out of the city because of a shortage of foster families. It breaks our heart. I know it breaks your heart. Of course, you know it breaks the heart of God. And so Foster the City is a movement of churches working together to try to change that. Not just here in San Francisco, but beyond. Actually, our movement of churches has grown now across 9 different states in the country. Almost 400 churches are linking arms together. We're raising up foster families. We're raising up support friends for foster families. And we're just going to keep going until there is literally more than enough to meet the need. We've got this collective vision that one day there will be a waiting list of families rather than a waiting list of kids in need of a home. And Canvas is on the front lines of helping us move towards that day. And so I want to honor you for that. I could just, over the last 10 plus years, I started this in 2015. Over the last almost 11 years, we've just watched story after story after story of just families who are moving heaven and earth to welcome in children that matter so much to the heart of God. We could just spend the whole morning just telling stories. Stories like the Brown family. So the Browns were just about to become empty nesters when they decided to adopt 5 kids under the age of 9 and start over. There's stories like Anne, who in her 80s welcomed home a teenage boy. Or my friend Lindsay, we got an email from a social worker about a little boy. They said that there's this little boy who has been living in the hospital for months because we can't find any family that would take in this precious but terminally ill little boy. And so we were kind of getting the word out to some of our community. And a friend of mine named Lindsay, she reached out and said, "Philip, I've been praying about it. I think that this is meant to be my son." And so she quit her job, turned her life upside down, and they brought this little boy into their home. And for years, he was not only just able to experience safety and stability and love and family and home, but that little boy had a higher quality of life than any of the doctors thought even possible. Any of the social workers had hoped. And that little boy was so deeply loved until the end. I mean, I could just tell you story after story after story. And again, like I said, Canvas has been on the front lines of helping to make this happen. But God is just doing a great work, and so much so, in fact, and I hope this doesn't come across like a humble brag. I don't mean it to be. I just want to give witness to what God is doing. Just several months ago, some leaders from Washington, D.C., some state-level kind of child welfare leaders were gathering together in the Capitol, and they get together a couple times a year, and they talk about new research and new innovation and best practice, and they've heard about what God is doing here on the West Coast. They've heard about how churches are rallying together, and so they said, would you come out and would you share, how are you seeing so many great families step up? How are you seeing so many churches engage? And so I got a chance to go out and actually just share. I got to share about our kind of collective vision, Canvas. I got to share about our mission and our model and our discipleship pathway, and talk about this app that we created that connects foster families with their support teams and all of that. And when I was out there sharing, I did say, hey, listen, if I get one shot at this, I'm just going to take the opportunity to put my cards on the table. So we're not seeing foster families step up because we've created an app. That's not why we're seeing families jump in. We're not seeing churches jump in because of some resource or tool we created. We are seeing families move towards these kids with extravagant, radical, self-giving love, because at the core of who we are as followers of Jesus is this belief that we have been radically loved. We love because he first loved us. That's why we're seeing families jump in. That's why churches like Canvas are jumping in. We love because he first loved us. In fact, we just kind of last fall, we hit our 10-year mark. And so I was getting all nostalgic. And so I went back to 2015 when we first launched Foster the City. And I went back and I listened to that first sermon that I shared at a church. And what I spoke on was 1 John 3, verse 1. 1 John 3:1. And this is what 1 John 3:1 says. Behold the great love the Father has lavished on us, that we might be called children of God, and that is what we are. That right there was our foundation. Just look at the great love the Father has lavished on us. And I'm more convinced Not only is this meant to be our foundation, but this cup overflowing identity as the beloved must be what we root ourselves in and abide in if we want to stay faithful and cross the finish line really, really well. And that's not just true for Foster the City, that is true for Canvas. You guys have been in a series recently talking about what it looks like to be a family on mission. If Canvas is going to be a family on mission, this must emanate from your identity as beloved. It must. We see this better than anywhere in the life of Jesus. If you go to the Gospels, which is like the 4 biographical accounts of Jesus' life, the Gospel writers tell us about 3 times when the Father speaks over the Son in an audible voice. When the Father speaks in a way that those around could hear. And so the first time, if you remember, Jesus hasn't even launched into his ministry yet. He's getting baptized. And when he comes up out of the water, the Father speaks over the Son and says, this is my beloved Son with whom I'm well pleased. You remember? This is my beloved Son. And then from that identity as the beloved, he then launches into his public ministry. Okay? Fast forward a little bit. Jesus is now standing on the mountain. He's been transfigured in glory. He's standing with Peter and James and John. And as he's standing there in his glory, the Father speaks over him and he says, this is my beloved Son with whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him. Okay, then you fast forward a little bit more. Jesus is just about to go to the cross. This is like right at the culmination, like the climax of his ministry. And Jesus is praying, and he says something like, Father, would you glorify your name through me? Glorify yourself through me. And then the Father actually responds and says something like, I have glorified myself through you, and I'll continue to glorify In other words, you already have pleased me. You already have made me so proud. I'm already so delighted in you. And I know you're going to keep going. So in other words, 3 times the Father speaks over the Son, and he essentially says the same thing. I love you, and I'm proud of you. I love you, and I'm pleased with you. Isn't that interesting? That he'd say the same thing 3 different times. He could have said 3 different things. Right? He had 3 different chances. He could have said, this is my righteous Son. Live like him. This is my wise Son. Like, listen to his words. Listen to his teachings. This is my just and compassionate Son. Do as he does. He doesn't. He says, this is my beloved Son with whom I'm well pleased. I love you and I'm so proud of you. Why is that? I was processing this with my spiritual director, and he said this. He said, Philip, the older that I get, the more convinced I am that spiritual maturity, growing as a follower of Jesus, is less about how much doctrine you master. It's less about how hard you strive each day. It's even less about how, did I manage my sin better today than I did yesterday? And it's more about an ever-increasing awareness of God's love for you. Spiritual maturity is more about an ever-increasing awareness of God's love for you. By the way, that's the message right there. I'm going to talk for a lot longer, but that's it, okay? That's the one thing that I hope you walk away with today. Your growth as a follower of Jesus is more about an ever-increasing awareness of God's love for you. So this is changing how I approach this understanding that everything else in my Christian life flows from an intimate knowledge of God's love. Not just cerebral thing, but an experience with God's love for me. So it's changing how I approach each day. So it's shifting my prayer. So instead of praying, oh God, would you help me to love you better today? God, would you help me to love you more today? Instead, what I'm doing is I'm praying, God, would you help me to know your love today? You see the difference? Would you help me to walk in your love today? When I go to the scriptures, every day I'm opening up God's word. God, would you help me to know your love through your word today? And so as I'm reading through the scriptures, like his love is leaping off every page. Let me give you 2 examples. Let me give you an example from the beginning of the Bible and one from the end of the Bible. So go to the very beginning of the Bible. I open up. I'm going to read front to back. I'm going to read like with an awareness of God's love for me. So I start reading through the creation account in Genesis, and I start reading about how God creates the heavens and the earth, like a place where we can know him and live with him and enjoy him and walk with him, where we could live under the canopy of his love. So he's creating this universe, and I'm reading about how God would walk through the garden in the cool of evening, in the cool of the evening with Adam and Eve. And it brought me back to my earliest days as a father. I have an 18-year-old son, and I know what you're thinking, wow, how can he have an 18-year-old son? That is really kind, but I do have an 18-year-old son who is just about to go to college, and I think back to when my wife and I first prepared a place for him. We put together his room, right? We painted the walls, and we put together this crib from IKEA. And we bought this rocking chair that we could not afford at the time. But that was going to be the place where my wife would rock him and care for him and feed him and nourish him and provide for him and build and sing over him and build this loving attachment, this loving bond with him. We bought him stuffed animals and books and things just for him to enjoy and things that would help him to grow. And we bought this rug for the floor where he and I would just wrestle for hours over the months and the years. Bottom line is every square inch of that room was created with him in mind, that he might live and grow and know our love. He might live under the canopy of our love. Now, what hit me is that's exactly what God is doing as he's creating this world. Every square inch of this earth was created that you might know him, enjoy him, live with him, to know his love. What if you actually lived with that truth in mind this week? That you understood the taste of good coffee in the morning is a good gift for you because he loves you. The taste of good wine, good food, the sound of your children's laughter, the way that the sun feels on your skin in the morning, the beauty of music. These were meant to be gifts because he loves you. And he wants to remind you constantly that he delights in you. I was talking about this with my kids the other day. We were driving back from a baseball game, and so we were just talking about some of the things that God's been teaching us, and I was sharing a little bit of this with them, and I said, guys, it's kind of like this. I kind of look at it like I was driving, so it's kind of like this windshield in front of me. If I fix my eyes, I can see the windshield. I can actually see the glass. I can see it. But I can also fix my eyes to see through the windshield to what's on the other side. You can fix your eyes to see a flower in blossom. You can also see through the flower to what's on the other side. You can see the beauty of a sunrise. You can also see through the sunrise to be able to see the giver of that good gift on the other side if you fix your eyes on it. This is what I wrote down. I said, every tree and flower, every mountain and meadow, every creature and star in the sky was created by our good Father as a gift and as a setting where we might be with him and know his love. What if you went through this week knowing that every sunrise is an I love you and every sunset is I delight in you? I was on a run recently, just out taking a jog, and it was spring was in full bloom, and I ran past this bush that had all of these flowers, these really fragrant flowers in bloom, and as I was running by, I felt the fragrance just hit me in the face, and as I'm running by, I blurt out without thinking, I just blurt out, I love you too. Because he's just telling me he loves me, and he delights in me, and he wants to give me good gifts. What if we fixed our eyes and had the eyes to see it? Let me fast forward and take you to the very end of the Bible, though. So at the very end of the scriptures, we get this glimpse at what's to come. We're told about this moment in time when all things would be made new, when death would be no more, every tear would be wiped away. In the words of, I think it's Samwise Gamgee, all the sad things would become untrue. Do you remember the setting? When we're told all of this is going to kind of culminate and climax? Do you remember what it's likened to? It's a wedding. It's a wedding celebration. When Jesus, who is the groom, is fully and finally united to his bride, which is the church. Now, as a pastor, I've done quite a few weddings over the years. My personal favorite moment in a wedding is when the doors in the back of the church open up and the bride starts to make her way down the aisle to the groom. Everybody stands, we all gasp like she's beautiful. She's making her way down. Inevitably, though, here's why I like it so much. It's because I steal a glance at the groom. Because inevitably, like the groom has a goofy grin on his face, right? He is beaming. Maybe there's even a little tear coming, a single tear coming down his cheek, but he's just so overwhelmed with love at the sight of this woman who's walking towards him, who's going to be his bride. Wives, out of curiosity, do you remember the look on his face as you were walking towards him? Do you remember that look? Can you picture it? Fellas, do you remember, husbands, do you remember what was going through your mind and your body as you were as you were watching her come towards you? Like this overwhelming sense of love that you had for this woman. My wife and I got married 22 years ago. And I still remember that moment, like hundreds of people in the room, everybody was dressed to the nines, the room looked beautiful. I had eyes for one person. Everything else was a blur. I had eyes for the one woman who was walking towards me. I was just so overwhelmed with love at this woman. What does it say about God's love for you that he says, the best way that I can put it is the love that a groom has for his bride on their wedding day? That's the best picture I can give you. The best picture I can give you is the love that a husband has for his wife on their wedding day. That's how he feels about you. Can I ask you actually a question? Can we pause? Let me ask you this question. When God thinks of you, what comes to his mind? Don't answer that out loud, obviously. But I do want every person here, can we just pause? Can we think about that for a moment? Can we contemplate that? For you personally, when God thinks about you, what comes to his mind? I've asked that question in different groups and settings over the years, and even some settings where we've actually processed our answers together. Here is the most common response that I've gotten to that question. When God thinks of me, here's what comes to his mind. Disappointment. That's the most common response. I've heard that time and time again. When God thinks of me, he's just disappointed. Does that resonate at all? It did with me. For a long time, that was my answer. And look at all the messes I've made, the mistakes that I've made, the destruction that I've left behind me, the people that I've hurt, the things that I've done time and time and time again. Surely God must be looking down on me, scowling, shaking his head, disappointed at me. But the more that I am beginning to come to grips, more that I'm beginning to understand this enduring, steadfast, uncompromising love, the more that I'm realizing, listen, I hope it's okay that I can say this, but I'm realizing that even my sin can help me know the love of God. Even the ugliest, darkest, most twisted parts of my life can actually catapult me into an ever-increasing awareness of God's love for me. Can I explain? So a few years ago, my family, we had a house fire. One of my kids was cleaning out the fireplace, put some ash from the fireplace in our garbage can outside, which that's a big no-no. And so he didn't realize that there was some hot ember still in the ash. So he puts it in the garbage can outside. It was only a matter of time before the trash can went up like a torch, and then my wife saw it just as the flames were beginning to make their way into our garage. And so she calls 911, then she calls me screaming, our house is on fire. I race home. Sure enough, there are 4 fire trucks outside of our house. And it was 10 months until we were able to move back home. But the day after the fire, my family and I went back to the house, and we just were walking through the rooms, just inspecting all the damage. My son, who I think was 10 at the time, came up to me and said, Dad, it was me. I was the one that put the ash in the garbage can. I couldn't wrap my arms around my son fast enough. Because I just needed him to know in that moment that nothing had changed about my love for him. Nothing had changed about our relationship. And I have to think that when my son looks back on maybe a loving relationship with his father, maybe he'll think about like the I love yous when I drop him off at school. Maybe he'll think about the high fives after a good baseball game. My guess, though, is that it's in those moments when we were literally standing together in the destruction, literally standing in the mess, when he got to experience the most potent taste of my love for him. And maybe that's true for you too. When you look around and you say, oh, but look at the mistakes that I've made. Look at the mess that I'm in. Look at the destruction. Maybe if you're willing to stand there and just look up into the eyes of your Father and say, I'm sorry, and you let him wrap you up in his love, maybe it's that moment when you can experience the most potent taste of his love for you. Pete Greig is the founder of the 24/7 prayer movement. He said this, the most important discovery you will ever make is the love that the Father has for you. Your power in prayer will flow from the certainty that the one who made you likes you. He's not scowling at you. He's on your side. Unless our mission and our acts of mercy, our intercession, petition, confession, and spiritual warfare begin and end in the knowledge of the Father's love, we will act and pray out of desperation, determination, and duty instead of revelation, expectation, and joy. Now, can I just pause and just name what I think at least a couple people in here might be thinking? Like, dude, this is kind of basic stuff. Jesus loves me. Got it. Like I've been singing that since I was a kid. This is pretty basic stuff. But this was never something that we were meant to graduate from. You don't graduate from this. Like this isn't a box that you check off and then you move on. You and I were meant to spend the rest of our lives savoring this. Jesus says, as the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. Abide means to make your home there. That's where you live. This is where we live. Is this in this awareness of his love over us. Again, it's not a box that we check off and then we move on or something that we come back and visit, but this is where we actually make our home. You and I were meant to spend the rest of our lives learning just how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ. That's what Paul says in Ephesians 3. He says, I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses all knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all of the fullness of God. My guess is you are here today because you want to be filled to the measure of all of the fullness of God. You want more of God in you. You want to experience more of the life that he has for you. You want to experience more of what he wants to do through you. You want to experience the fullness of God in your life. That's my guess for every person here. You want to experience the fullness of God. What Paul says here is the way that will happen is if we continue to grow in our understanding of how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ. That's how we get it. That's how we know the fullness of God. As we grow in an awareness of his love over us. And I think that's really interesting that he chose to use all of those descriptors. It does beg the question, why use those descriptors? Timothy Keller was a pastor in New York City. He asked that question years ago in a sermon. I keep coming back to that. We can't know for sure why Paul would say, the wide, the long, the deep, the high love of Jesus, but maybe we can guess for a minute. What do you think he meant by the wide love of Jesus? maybe what Paul had in mind when he wrote that down was what John described in the book of Revelation when he would describe that there one day will be a multitude of people from every nation and tribe and tongue and language and culture and background, all standing before the throne of God. Everybody dressed in these white robes, every sin forgiven, every mistake cleansed, standing before the throne of God together, side by side, worshiping the Lamb. Maybe that's what Paul's thinking about with the wide love of Jesus. And maybe the more that we understand the wide love of Jesus, the less that we would be prone to be racist. The less that we would be prone to judge or think that anybody is outside of the reach of Jesus' love. What about the deep love of Jesus? What might Paul have meant by that? Maybe he was thinking about the descent of Jesus, just how deep Jesus was willing to go. Maybe he was thinking about what he wrote in Philippians 2, where he told the church in Philippi, like Jesus, though he was in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be held on to, but he made himself nothing, taking the form of a servant and becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Again, Jesus' death was not the death of a martyr. Nobody took his life from him. He laid it down of his own accord. He drank the cup of wrath for my sins and for yours. This is the highest of highs, descending to the depths of hell so you and I can ascend to the heights of heaven. And when we understand the descent to which Jesus went, the depth to which he went for you and for me, perhaps the more that we too will eagerly descend, as Sister Teresa Noble says. The more that we too will live with humility and service and compassion for the vulnerable. What about the long love of Jesus? Like the length. Maybe Paul was thinking about like the perseverance of Jesus' love, like this steadfast, enduring love of Jesus. That Jesus is the shepherd that leaves the 99 for the one. That though, if we're honest, you and I are prone to wander, aren't we? We're prone to leave the God that we love. That no matter how far we go, we were singing about it, that there is no distance that he would not travel. He is the hound of heaven and he's on our heels. There is no mountain he would not climb. There's no wall that he would not kick down to be able to bring back those that he loves. And maybe the more that we understand the length of his love, the enduring steadfastness of his love, the more that we will live with peace and confidence and hope and faith. But what about the heights of his love? This one's even hard to even begin to comprehend. Jesus, he does not just want you to have a taste of his love. He's not interested in you just getting a little sample, a little piece of his love. He wants you to experience the heights of his love. In John 17, just before he's going to the cross, Jesus prays and says, Father, the glory that you and I shared before creation, I want them to share it too. Think about that for a minute. He says, Father, the glory that you and I shared, I want to share it with them. I want to invite them into that. One of the highlights of my ministry year last year was I got a chance to go to do some ministry in Oxford. And it's one of my favorite places on the planet. And I had a day in Oxford where I had nothing to do. I had no responsibilities. It was a Sunday. And so it was like this gorgeous day. I borrowed a bike from the hotel where I was staying, and I just rode all around the city in this like beautiful day in Oxford. And it was kind of like a pilgrimage. I rode over to J.R.R. Tolkien's house where he wrote Lord of the Rings. And then I rode over to C.S. Lewis's house where he wrote the Narnia series and so many other great works. And then it was a Sunday, so I actually went to C.S. Lewis's church where he worshiped throughout his life, and I actually sat in his pew. And then I spent the afternoon in Oxford, in like this beautiful English meadow, reading this great book. And for me, for my personality and for the things that I'm into, like it was just about the perfect day. But can I tell you what kept going through my mind all throughout that day? Man, I really wish my wife was here. I really wish Jessica was here to enjoy this. Not because I was lonely. Like the day wasn't lacking. Again, it was like It was basically a perfect day for me. I wasn't lacking anything. It's just that when you love someone, you want to share your joy with them. You want to invite them into that. God is not lacking anything. God is not lonely. It's just that because he loves you, he wants to share his joy with you. I mean, just think about this. The scriptures say, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has imagined the things that God has prepared for those who love him. We can't even begin to imagine what he has in store for us because he wants to share his joy with us. Oh, he loves you. He likes you. He delights in you. And every day he's trying to remind you of this. The degree to which we know and savor God's love over us is the degree to which we will live with joy and hope and peace and perseverance and compassion and without fear or shame or pride. There's a guy named Francis Chan. He's an author. He was a pastor. He wrote a book called Beloved last year. And the book was kind of around the same stuff we've been talking about today, that so much of his Christian life needs to emanate from his identity as a beloved. So his pursuit of holiness and his life of compassion and justice and so on should emanate from his identity as beloved. Well, you might have heard of Francis Chan in the past. He kind of first came on started to kind of become more popular in kind of the Christian circles because of a book that he wrote years ago called Crazy Love. And if you're familiar with all of that book, Crazy Love was written out of this concern he had to see the American church get off of the pew, to actually start to take seriously this command to kind of go and pick up our cross and to go out and to pursue holiness and again move towards the vulnerable and kind of live a more radical life of devotion. And so this is what Francis wrote in his book Beloved last year. He said, "It may sound like I'm contradicting everything I wrote in Crazy Love. The point of that book was to address the fact that the Christianity of the New Testament looks extremely different from what we're experiencing in the U.S. We attend church services that make us feel comfortable when Jesus commanded us to deny ourselves, pick up our cross, and follow him. My fear, while I wrote the book, was that we resembled the lukewarm church of Laodicea in Revelation chapter 3. In love, I was hoping to stir people's convictions because I did not want them to be spit out of the mouth of God." Listen to this. "I don't regret writing Crazy Love. I just wish I had written this book first. If we don't believe, receive, and meditate on the love of God regularly, the message of Crazy Love can lead people into frantic works. Before settling on Beloved, my original plan was to title this book Crazy Loved." Crazy Loved comes before Crazy Love. You follow? Crazy Loved comes before. And I even like that phrase, crazy loved, because you and I aren't just loved. You and I are loved to a point that doesn't make sense. It's irrational. It's unreasonable. Lisa Bevere calls it a wild and fierce love. Tyler Staton, pastor in New York, calls it a stubborn love. G.K. Chesterton called it the furious love of God. Brennan Manning similarly called it the furious longing of God, which, by the way, fury might sound kind of funny, like his love is angry. It's not fury like anger. It's like the fury of a storm. Storms don't get angry, but there's an intensity to it. There's a power and a wildness to it, right? John O'Donohue, an Irish poet, he says it like this. He says, "May you know the urgency with which God longs for you." Guys, that's my prayer for you today. This is what this is all about. May you know the urgency with which God longs for you. Perhaps my favorite, though, way to describe this is how activist Dorothy Day says it, and we just were singing it. She calls it the reckless way of love. The reckless way of love. Not reckless like thoughtless. Not reckless as in careless, but reckless as in come what may. I will love you no matter the cost. I will love you no matter what it takes. Come what may. That's the kind of love that God loves us with. It's a love that forgives not 7 times, but 70 times 7. It's a love that leaves the 99 for the one. It's a love that reveals itself to the infants and to the foolish, not the wise and the elite. It's a love that saves and sanctifies and stubbornly pursues you and me, his beloved. It's a love that became vulnerable for the sake of the vulnerable. It's a love that took on flesh. Why? So that it could be pierced by the ones it created. It's an overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And the more that we know and savor this love, the more that we become a people of love. Brendan Manning again says it like this. He says, Christianity happens when men and women experience the reckless, raging confidence that comes from knowing Jesus Christ. And when you and I come to know the reckless love of God, what develops in us is a reckless, raging confidence, and you find yourself doing something reckless like foster care. And if you ever wondered, are we going to get back to foster care? Here we are. We're back. It is reckless to foster. As an experienced foster dad, we're actually third-generation foster parents. This has been a part of my story ever since I remember. It's reckless to foster. It is. It's reckless to voluntarily open your home to dysfunction. It's reckless to open your heart to a child who has experienced significant trauma, knowing that you will have to be the one to absorb the consequences of someone else's actions. It's reckless to throw away a life of easy retirement and golf and European travel for more years of diapers and tantrums and science projects. It's reckless to intentionally get attached to a child that's in your home, knowing that in the end your heart is probably going to get ripped out when you have to say goodbye. It's reckless to choose your vulnerable neighbor over self-preservation. And it's also, by the way, reckless to drop your nets and follow Jesus. Let me just give you an example of what this looks like. I want to invite you to watch this story with me.
We got invited to a Foster the City dinner. At that dinner, there was a video of Bethany and Brian, two actually foster parents, and that kind of convicted me to just ask my wife, maybe we should just pray for the next 3 or 4 months just to see, what is our involvement in this world of vulnerable childcare and foster care. We started praying and thinking about it, and nothing was just telling us no. So we just kept moving forward and pretty much got certified, found out that we were certified in December, then got a call pretty much like a week later. Very, very quick turnaround. That first placement was a shocker for us. I'd say that first placement was hard, not because the child was hard, but hard because God had to work in us to prepare us for this kind of ministry. Choosing suffering was just something so very contrary to what we were ready for. Social worker visits, lawyer visits, all these things happening all at once. My wife and I not fully being on the same page, at least initially, and it was tough during that first month. But God started to work in our hearts as we started to realize, oh wow, this is something still so very good. It took us some time though. That first placement was hard.
One of the great joys of mine has been to see new life enter into these children's stories with this conviction that every child is made in God's image, that every child matters to God.
Because my fellow pastor Ryan himself started fostering, our church got to see this up close. Not just hearing about foster ministry happening in another church, but they were seeing it happen right here in our congregation. That then led very quickly to us getting signed up with Foster the City, getting coached and mentored by the wonderful people there. Pretty soon we identified advocates here at New Life. Before we knew it, the vast majority of our membership was involved directly with foster ministry somehow, whether as certified parents or as support friends on support teams. Very early on, we realized that embracing foster ministry at our church would not be a cakewalk. Our church is primarily, not exclusively, but primarily Asian American. In Asian culture, foster ministry is just really not a thing. If it is ever talked about, it is almost always rejected, almost always denigrated. I think of one family, for example, that informed their parents that they would be pursuing certification and welcoming foster children into their home. The main challenge there was that the home they were living in was owned by his parents. And his parents made very clear, if you do that, you get out of our house. That family packed their things up and moved to another place in order to comply with their parents' wishes or demands and still be able to step forward in faith with foster ministry.
we definitely rely on our church body to step into this ministry. I remember when we were going to take in our teenager for the first time, I share it with the leadership team, be praying for us for considering this. And Amos sends me a message and says, Ryan and Chen, thank you for serving in this way. New life stands with you. That was so memorable to me and so impactful to me that my lead pastor would say that to me. So it really is a church family collectively doing this. We've always seen it not as like, this is Ryan and Chen's ministry. This is New Life's ministry. And I'd say that's what I have felt throughout these years, is to see that, hey, every single one of our church members that are involved in foster care, they see this as their own ministry, and they want to care for these children.
We don't view New Life Community Church, our church, as a particularly special church in the sense that we are particularly well-resourced compared to other churches, or that we are a big church. We are not a large church. If we have been able to do this by God's grace, certainly God's grace can equip other churches to do it as well. I have no doubt that any church that knows Christ, that has His Word in their midst, can do this. The way that it grows people, the way that it mobilizes a church to action, the way that it allows people to live out their Christianity in a very, very tangible way. What is a way that I can participate as a Christian that really actually does make a tremendous difference in this world? I would say that these are all blessings of foster ministry. I would encourage any and every church to make it a part of their church culture and their church DNA.
I love that. I love the story. There's so much more to that we don't have time to unpack in a video. One of my, by the way, he talked about New Life. It's a church of about 100 adults on a Sunday morning. They've raised up 16 foster families. They raised up almost 40. I think it's 37 or 39 support friends for foster families. So about 90% of their actually adult congregation is in some way intentionally engaged in helping vulnerable children and families in our community. Isn't that crazy? In most churches we work with, that's the opposite. It's a select few. But in their church, they said, we want it to actually be, if you're not involved in some way, you're kind of the exception in the community. But one thing I love about Ryan's story, he talked about this, the teenager that they brought in, she was 14, which is actually a teenage mom. She came in with a little baby. But she came in, and 14 years old, she's Hispanic, and she just kind of said in passing that she had never celebrated her birthday. She's never had a birthday party before. And she's 14, and they realized, it clicked with them, like, oh, she's from the Hispanic community, turning 15, it's kind of a big deal in her culture. And so although nobody in the entire church had ever even been to one, this predominantly Asian American church community threw a quinceañera for this girl. And I hear stories like that, and I just think, man, I want my life to tell a story like that. Don't you? I was talking with somebody right before this service, and I'm sorry, I'm going to wrap up here. I promise. But he was asking, like, how do you see this in San Francisco, though? I mean, that's in the East Bay. They're in Fremont. Like, how would we see this in San Francisco? Our places are smaller. It's a little bit more expensive to live here. And I shared a couple of stories, including one. I talked about there was a couple that was living in a one-bedroom apartment, but they felt like a clear call from the Lord. We've got to take this step. We've got to help these children. So what they did was they moved out of their bedroom into the living room so that they could have a bedroom, because you have to have a bedroom for a kid. So they would have their bedroom available for a child that needed a home. They chose to they literally gave up their bedroom. I know that sounds crazy, and that's the point. It's reckless. It's no matter the cost, come what may, I'm willing to do whatever it takes if I get to love somebody in this way that God has loved me. So I don't know how it would look in your story, but I just have two invitations. Would you just be willing to ask, God, like, who are you calling me to love in the way that you loved me? It could be with Foster the City. I got to put the call out. If you are interested and just available to just simply learn, what would it look like for me to open my heart and my home to a child in need? I want to encourage you to come see us at the back table. Fill out a little next step card. Looks like this. Fill this out. Maybe God's calling you to learn how you could support a foster family. Every time I'm here, I say the same thing, but about half of the foster families around the country will drop out within the first year. Fostering is really, really hard. What changes that is if a foster family takes their journey in community. So for every foster family that we raise up, we are wrapping them with at least 4 support friends that provide practical, emotional, spiritual support. They're bringing meals, they're babysitting, they're showing up and they're mowing a lawn, or they're picking up the dirty clothes from the front porch and cleaning these clothes and dropping them back off. It's much more than just doing a chore for the foster family. You're providing extra capacity so they can care better for the kids that are in their home. We're not seeing 50% of families keep going. We see about 90% of foster families keep going after the first year, because we can do hard things if we don't do hard things alone. So maybe that's a role you could look at. We also are looking to add more leadership here at Canvas. We call that an advocate, somebody helping to lead the Foster the City ministry at the church. If you're interested in any way you want to learn about fostering, supporting a foster family, or ministry leadership, come to this back table, fill out this next step card. If you fill this out, I swear to you, you have my word, I will not drop a foster kid off to your house. All I'm going to do was our team is going to send you an email, and we're going to tell you about an informational meeting that's coming up. It's Zoom, it's webinar. You literally don't have to get dressed back up and come to church. You can log in, and it's about an hour long, and we'll kind of deep dive in these roles. So that's the ask. Would you be willing to give 1 hour of your time over the next couple of weeks to learn just a little bit more? Here's a second invitation, and this is really what I was praying for the most as I was driving here today. Would you be ready to receive the wide, long, deep, high love of God? This week, friends, my prayer for you is that you would experience and that you would have an ever-increasing awareness of God's love for you. Please hear me. God loves you. Your Father loves you. He delights in you. He is not scowling at you. He is not just disappointed in you. And every day, in fact, every moment of every day, I believe God is trying to communicate that to you. If you have eyes to see, He's trying to remind you, I love you and I delight in you. Would you be ready to receive the wide, deep, high, long love of Jesus? God, I thank you so much.